Hello and welcome to another episode of the Brain Picking Podcast. So I'm your host Miles, and today I'm going to be picking the brain of a professional and amateur boxing coach and also PT, Tommy Johnson. How you doing today?
I'm good, cheers Miles. Yeah, really
good.
Good,
mate.
Good to be here.
Good. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I've been very much looking forward to this one. This one is going to be very interesting, to be honest. I just read off your titles.
Yeah.
You're a man of many different hats.
Yeah.
Many different kind of careers, and you've all been down different roads and different stories and things like that.
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, there's so much to pick off. So if we'll kind of start from the top and work our way down. So
Yeah.
how long have you been a PT then?
PT, probably about 10 years, I'd say, PT in boxing. I'm only specialised in boxing, so I know a lot of other different fields, strength and conditioning, stuff I've picked up, which is all really just solely based at boxers and nothing else. But yeah, about 10 years. So actual time involved in boxing would be 25 years.
25 years, okay.
Yeah.
And as I've said, you've worked at an amateur level and a pro level with different boxers.
So when I say involved, I only mean coaching. Like actually, I boxed from 14 years upwards. Boxed for about 4 or 5 years, then jacked it in, went away from the sport, and then came back as a coach, like many amateur boxers do.
Yeah. So when you first started out coaching, so you hadn't been a coach before, you kind of come onto the scene. I mean, what was that like to swap from hitting the pads to holding the pads? What was that like?
Yeah, it's different. It's totally different because you know you're trying to transfer some of your skills across. As every fighter's got their own niche way of doing things. Like some tall lads will be rangy boxers, some short lads like me will be come forward fighters, and it's all horses for courses. So you kind of learn that as you become a coach. So I try to transfer my skills across onto certain boxers, and it doesn't really work. You learn that through time. You've got to find a fighter's flair, they call it. Yeah. And then when you find that flair, you sort of home in on them skills that boxer's got. So I kind of got involved. My uncle was my coach, and then he came back to Reading area, and then he started coaching in Camberley, and I started assisting him around about 2000, I reckon, 2000 and just 2000 dead. And then just started assisting him, like coaching. Yeah. But and then just helping him out, and then bizarrely, it's just, I was thinking about it earlier, it just sort of ended up moving to a different house, coming away from that club in Camberley, and then just setting a gym up in my garage, which was a block of garages.
Okay, yeah.
It was a block of garages, set a gym up in there, put a bag in there and had some weights and bits and pieces in there. Used to skip out the front. And then one of the parents that I work with, she said, my lad's, he could do with learning a few bits and pieces for the boxing so he can defend himself. Yeah. And I said, yeah, no worries. I've got a bit of a setup. So I started doing a bit with him. Then my neighbour, whose brother was boxing, been boxing, but had a bad experience at a local boxing club. He said, do you mind doing a bit with him? He said, I've seen you out in the garage. You see like you know what you're doing and that. And then took him under my wing and started working with him. So then I had 2 lads that I was working with in the garage. You can imagine working in the garage with the temperatures like this. It's in a block, like it's freezing cold. And then there was 3, and then there was 4. Yeah. And it's in Southcote, so like there's nothing for the kids to do around there. And these kids were sort of coming around and they wanted to hit the bag up and hit the pads and do a little bit. And it just ended up developing from there. So it ended up like starting off with 4 fighters. I say fighters, they were just trainee boxers really. And then they all wanted to sort of develop more. So, we've thought about, right, how we get one of the parents of the original kid that I started boxing, Caroline, she started helping me out with the admin side of it because I didn't really know the admin side of it. She wrote to the council, she got the council involved. The council were like, we could do with something around that area. They see that we had, that we wanted to drive to set something up, and then we're like, right, we've got to be affiliated to someone. We've got to have insurance. You can't train boys without insurance. So then I got affiliated to what was ABA Boxing then, which is now England Boxing. Yeah. So we got affiliated to them. We found a place in the Southcote in the Churchill. The vicar was all on board. It was really good. Everything just seemed to fall into place really, really easy. Like we put a ring in there, we put bags up. So you can imagine, I used to work Saturday nights on the railway. Have like 2 or 3 hours kit, then go to the gym, set a ring up, a 16-foot boxing ring with these lads. I mean, all these 3 lads, bless them, they all used to come down at me on a Sunday morning, put all the bags up, set the club up, and then when you finished the club, you'd have to take everything back down. So it was quite long. But yeah, that's how it sort of kicked off with the club. So we got affiliated. Tommy's ABC was born. Then the boys started sparring because they were all affiliated fighters. Then when they started sparring, we take them to other gyms, and they started sparring with other gyms, and then we get them carded. So you go through the process of them being proper licensed fight. They would have been licensed fighters anyway, but we start carding them. You start taking them all around the country and start putting them in competitive bouts. And that's how the amateur boxing club grew.
Yeah, it's just incredible that everything just kind of seemed to fall into place.
It was like just like a
bit of a domino effect, wasn't it?
It was like it was meant to be. Yeah.
No, that's so when you're taking on these lads, what was kind of the overall view? Was it like, right, we're gonna train you up, we're gonna get you in bouts, or was it just right, just come and train and I'll teach you what I know, and the kind of the bouts kind of came later, or was it something right from the get go?
Yeah, so they get to a certain skill set, and then you're teaching the defences, you show them how to throw punches properly, and then they start learning. They learn all that, and then they're like, we want to take it to the next level. So we want to, maybe do some competitive stuff. So you're doing blocks and parries where you're learning to defend yourself, and then you take it to the next level of wanting to competitively do some sparring. Yeah. And it seems like most kids, when they get to sort of 14, 15, they develop, its testosterone levels go up, and they really want to push themselves hard into a sport. And boxing's a good sport for that, especially if they've got a few issues. And a couple of them lads that I mentioned earlier, the 3 lads, one of them had sort of a lot of issues going on in the background, so boxing was a real good release for him. I became very close to that first boxer. He used to come around my house, practically live with me for a couple of years. Real good lad, Ian White, real good kid. Still in contact with him now, 25 years later, still in contact with him, still regularly speak to him via social media and stuff. And then off the back of having Tommy's ABC, we wanted to get a permanent premises because we didn't want to keep going in and out of out of Churchill. It was becoming a bit of a pain with setting the bags and everything up. So at the same time, I'd been training, funny enough, down the Atrium, which was Rivers, and there was a guy in there who was a PT and had his studio, and he wanted to set a gym up. So we thought, right, we could have the gym downstairs, we had the boxing club upstairs, and then TNT was born. And then that was born off the back of that. So, but that would have never have been born without the boxing club. I don't care what anyone says. The boxing club was the reason why it was always okay for that gym to be where it was. The boxing club, taking kids off the street, doing stuff for them, giving them stuff to do, and teaching them discipline and discipline within the sport was the key thing for the gym. So we developed from 4 fighters to 6 fighters to 10 fighters to 12 fighters, and it just kept building and building and building. And other coaches come in and assisted me with that. So it was good. It was good.
I mean, so moving into TNT and having the boxing gym upstairs. I mean, TNT was a quite a successful boxing gym, but also gym in itself, wasn't it? And I suppose having that kind of that space, that it was the same every time you weren't setting a ring up, you weren't doing that. I suppose it became a lot more fluent for you. Yeah,
it was a lot easier when we moved to there. You could train every night of the week if you wanted to. You could go in any time you wanted to. All the kit was all set up, so it was the reason why the club went on to the more success off the back of that, because it was so much. It was the next natural progression, and then from there, TNT was getting so big. We was like, well, let's move the boxing club to another premises. So we moved it to another premises, and TNT went upstairs and downstairs at that particular point, because it was so busy in there. And the gym then went over to Portman Road, which was the post office social club. Really handy, because they had a big social club next to the boxing club, so you could then start putting shows on, so you could then do your own shows. Although I had done my own shows at Reading Stadium and places like that. So it was the next natural progression. But that all takes, all that admin and everything, when you're doing it on your own, it all takes a lot of time. You've got a lot of fighters, you've got championships going on, you're out this weekend there, you're that weekend there. It takes a lot of time, and at the same time I had 4 young children and a wife, and
you've got your own life outside of boxing as well.
And you're trying to hold that down, I was building Reading Station. I was a senior construction manager
Yeah.
on the track element of that,
Wow.
and I was doing
Okay,
50-hour
yeah.
weekends, and it all just started to rack up. And it's like, there's something's got to go here, and it was looking a bit shady there anyway. The pro stuff with Social Club looked like it was going under, and the fighters were starting to like get older or go off to other places. Some went pro, some moved on to other gyms or whatever, and it was just the right thing to do at the time was for me to fold the club up. And you know, that was a hard thing to do because I put a lot of time and energy into it, but it had to go, because if it didn't go, it was knocking onto everything else. I would have made myself ill trying to do it all.
Yeah.
There's too much going on,
Starting to affect everything else
Yeah.
in a way, and obviously you don't want that happening. You don't want it to start kind of ruling your life. You want to, and I suppose you also want to keep enjoying it.
Yeah.
You never wanted to lose the enjoyment
Exactly.
of it all. So when you're boxing, you're coaching, you've got these kids coming in, and was there a point that someone walked through the door and you just went, you know what, this kid's a bit different. He's moving a bit different. He's actually showing a skill set that he's just picking up kind of naturally, instead of right. Come on,
Some kids
repeating.
get it really naturally. Some kids pick it straight up. Like my son, he boxed all over Europe. He's 30-odd bouter, and he was natural. He's just a natural sporty, athletic kind of person. He'll pick a tennis racket up, and he'll be good at tennis. He'll pick a rugby ball up and go and score 3 tries. You know, he played football for Southampton. He played everything he did. He'd done at a high level.
Yeah.
And then when he boxed, he boxed at a high level as well. So some kids are just naturally sporty. That's the point. Really. Some kids will just pick it up, but some kids take a lot of hard work to get where they need to get to. But you will get to where you get to. You just got to keep going through it, and they will pick it up. They will pick it up. But yeah, we've had some good kids in there. We've had some good natural lads.
Yeah.
That have been good fighters. Patrick Mendy walked in there. He'd come off the Commonwealth Games. He just walked in my gym when I was at TNT. He said, can you start training me? I was like, yeah, I can train you. And he didn't do a lot in the amateurs for us, but when he went pro, he done really well as a professional fighter.
Yeah.
He boxed in the prize fighter. He won the prize fighter.
Really?
Yeah, and then he went on, he wasn't under me, it was under a professional coach at the time. And then he went on, I think he might have even fought for a world title fight. But yeah, Patrick Mendy was a good fighter. One that sticks out as a real good fighter that come through the gym.
And was there any point that you took someone, I mean, from being a coach to then coaching a camp? At what point did you start going, right, okay, I'm gonna start running camps for some of these fighters and actually seeing where we can get with some of these fighters? I mean, what's the difference between a camp and regular training then?
So you kind of lead into, like, when you talk about camps, you're talking about like more like a professional fighter.
Okay.
A professional fighter would build into, he'd probably, if he was a home fighter, he'd probably get like 6-8 week notice, maybe 12 weeks notice that he's fighting, and then he can build into his camp. He can properly go through his week schedules. He can start off like 1 week to week 1 to week 3. He can be light. Week 4 to 7, he can start picking up his a bit heavy stuff, and then maybe 7 to 10, he'd start really picking up his heavy sparring. But with the amateurs, you're ready all the time, because you literally in camp all the time. And this is the difference when you start talking about professional boxing and amateur boxing, and the reason why professional boxers have got that time period where they can do decent weight cuts, whereas amateur fighters can't really do massive weight cuts, because they've got to be ready all the time. Apart from championships, where they'll know they're coming up to that championships, they'll know their dates. But normal fighters, which are just competitively fighting all year round, they've got to be ready all the time. So they've got to be walking around on their weight all the time. So there's no going off and having a chocolate biscuit or going out and having a pig out. You can't do that as an amateur fighter. You've just literally got to be on your weight, ready to go. Phone rings, we've got a fight here. Is your lad ready? Yep, he's ready. You take it and you go and box. And that's kind of the difference between.
How short a notice are we talking? Are we talking
sometimes
days?
I've been rung up on the night before and gone, is your lad in the gym? Is he ready to go? And
Really?
you just literally go, yeah, I can do that. I'll be there. And then other times you'd be like 2 or 3 weeks notice, maybe. Championships, you'll know they're coming up. So you'll have your fighter ready for the championships. You'll get him into that weight category that you need to get him into. You manage that weight efficiently so that you're not dehydrating your fighter. Make sure you bring them down nice and steady. No crash weighting. You can't do that with fighters. You make them And obviously with junior fighters, it's a different ball game again. Junior fighters, you don't take any weight off them. They walk around what they are. They fight at what they are.
Yeah. So when surely that causes quite a bit of concern sometimes on whether, do you find yourself, do amateur fighters find themselves missing opportunities because they're not ready, because they've gone, you know what, I'm going to go out for a takeaway, and then they come in kilo heavier than them?
Yeah, potentially. If you've done a check weigh in with your boxer and he's 2 kilos over what you've said he would be,
yeah,
you just turn around and say the bout's off, and then the fighter's obviously gutted because he's not made the weight. I mean, these boys are constantly training. The serious England boxers are training all the time, ready to go. They're smoking. They want to go all the time. They want to fight all the time. It's as simple as that. Decent ones, they're ready to go. But some fighters, they do mess about with their weight, and then you weigh them, and you go, look, you've put 3 kilos on. I can't take that bout. You don't want them 3 kilos over where they need to be, because it's a lot. You give away 3 kilos in England boxing or professional boxing. It's a lot of weight to give away.
Yeah. So 3 kilos. That's quite. I train at the gym quite regularly. I would say 3 kilo weight loss or 3 kilo weight gain is kind of, in my argument, a little bit of a potential weight fluctuation. And by okay, right, I've put 3 kilos on, 2 weeks time I can have that off.
Yeah.
But with a amateur fighter, it almost seems that is the difference between fighting or not, losing and winning. Yeah, definitely.
You look at 3% dehydration, you're looking at 20% lack of performance. So
really, it has that much effect.
Yeah, if you lose too much fluid, you are going to perform rubbish. Then that's why it's so important to manage your weight all the time. And we say it to our fighters all the time. They fluctuate with their weights, especially the professional fighters. They go up and down with their weights, and it's just not safe. They should, if they know they've got a fight coming up, they shouldn't leave it all to the last minute. They should be just bringing themselves down nice and steady, like 1% a week, 1% a week, 1% a week. Just get yourself down, get yourself prepared, ready for that bout.
Yeah. So what is the difference then for an amateur fighter when they get the? What's the process like of going pro? Is it like a call up and you go, oh, you've made it, or is it kind of like a situation that lands on potentially the coach's plate and they kind of slide it across and go, look, we've got an opportunity?
So the difference between England boxing or amateur boxing and professional boxing is you then got managers and promoters and coaches. So with England boxing, you don't have a manager, you don't have a promoter. When you go professional boxing, you've got to have a manager. You don't have you work with promoters, but you've got to have a manager. You've got to have a trainer. You sign a contract, not like a contracted employment, but you sign a contract that you're going to do. You're going to work with the manager. You're going to work with a percentage of whatever your purse is. That's the big difference. Now, ideally, you'd become a top class amateur and then you'd go pro. And then if you did that, you're going to have a promoter going, right, I'm going to look after you. You're going to come and fight for me. You're not going to have to sell 100 tickets every single fight because I'm going to support you. We're going to get you to the top higher echelons, and then he's going to pull his money out of you when you get to the top end of the boxing game. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you'll get an amateur boxer that's had 30 or 40 fights. He's been there or thereabout. Of a decent fighter, but not good enough for the promoters to think, they're going to take a chance at him. He may not make it in the program. Not all good amateurs make good professionals. It's a different sport. It's a total different sport. Amateur boxing compared to professional boxing, they're two different sports. Amateur boxing's fast and ferocious. Professional game's a lot slower, especially when you get to 8 rounds, 12 rounds. It's a slower bout. It's a lot more about power. So the gloves are smaller. You wear proper hand wraps. It's a lot different from amateur boxing. Amateur boxing's 3 rounds or 4 rounds, 4 threes or 3 threes or 3 twos or 3 1.5 minutes for kids. And it's fast and it's quick and it's boom, 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 in and out, boom, boom, boom. And it's just about winning on points. But professional's about selling tickets. It's all about money. It's the money game. So, the promoters want someone. If he's a puncher and he's knocking everyone out, the promoters are like, this guy's decent. We can invest some time into him, invest some money into him. But most fighters, you get a house fighter and then you get the away fighter. The house fighter will more than likely have to sell 100, 150 tickets just to break even, like before he even gets a penny. Wow. So that's the thing about the professional game that people don't realise. The away fighter, he's getting paid. So he might have had 30, 40 fights, 50, 60 fights, but he's paid to lose. He turns up, he's paid to lose, you know. But he could probably win. He's probably good enough to beat a lot of the professionals that are just going over, but he's paid to lose. So he's going to turn up. He doesn't want to get knocked over. He wants to survive. He's going to make it really hard for you. And he's going to, you know, and that's what he's going to do. He's going to want to get through that fight. If he could probably knock you over, and if the British board might say, you've lost the last couple now, you need to, you know, we're having a close look at you, and he might go out there and he might bang up and come and box her out. But that's what people forget, is these professional fighters, they've got to sell tickets, you know, especially the ones that are going over and they're not the top rate, you know, they've got to sell a lot of tickets, and that's fine. Your first fight, you probably sell 100 tickets. I could probably sell 100 tickets on my first fight, but then do it again in 6 weeks' time. Yeah. You know, you're going to London, people got to spend a lot of money. It's like, get to London, that costs enough money within itself, then go into the venue and watching the fight. The tickets may be, I don't know, 50, 60 quid to watch the fighter, and he bangs them out in the first round, poof, and it's like, and a lot of people don't, you know, it's an expensive night, but it's the way that the boxing is, you know. People got to always remember there's a home fighter, there's an away fighter, and then when you get the top flight, they're both going to be basically home fighters, because they're both fighting for title fights. They're both going to want to win, because winning a title fight, obviously prestigious, and it will get you up the ladder, you know. So that's kind of the difference with the amateurs and the pros. I mean, the amateurs 50-50 fights or 60-40 fights. So, you know, you're not got the house fighter and the away fighter. They're both house fighters. They both want to win. You know what I mean? They both want to win the bout. So it's fast and ferocious.
So in amateur, it seems that it's a lot more down to, like, it's a lot more down to two people actually they're almost hungry to get to the next part. They're always the hungry fighters, aren't they? Trying to go out, have a knockout, get a bit of attention, that type of stuff. And then when you get more to pro, it's more sensible boxing, but also a lot more money based. And there's a lot more about the entertainment side of it. Yeah,
it's no one wants to watch two boxers. Like I watch two pugilists. You know, in and out, you know, that's, unless if you cut yourself in half like me and it says boxing in the middle, I want to watch that. But most people want to watch crash, bang, wallop. That's why the heavyweights are so successful, wouldn't they? Because everyone wants to watch the big punch, the big knockout. But it's not that's not what the sport is, really. It's not necessarily the beauty behind the sport, is it? No, it's entertainment.
The big knockouts, they're entertaining to watch, and they're good for a highlight reel and things like that. But when you actually look at the technicality of what these boxers are doing, and also the work that they've put in, you kind of do forget, like, 12 weeks doesn't, like, in a mind of a non-boxer. Okay, 12 weeks, but 12 weeks is a grueling camp, and it's hard work. Definitely. And things like that, isn't it? So,
and not only is it just the camp of trying to be injury free, trying not to get your nose broken sparring, or trying not to get your hands damaged, you know, hitting the heavy bags. It's also the weight management. They're having to cut that weight nice and steady through your camp and get to that end goal where you haven't got to strip off stupid amounts of weight, because you can't, because the British Board of Boxing, they weight check you. You know, they'll be weight checking you before the bout, because they want to make sure that you don't go into that fight dehydrated. Because if you go into a fight dehydrated over a long fight, there's a big risk, and we've seen it with top class fighters like Michael Watson, people like that you could end up collapsing. You know, because your brain is dehydrated, it takes a lot of shots, it swells up, and it bleeds, and that's that's reality of it.
Yeah, I definitely think, from an outside of boxing point of view, that people kind of forget that how, like, just what it is. It is two blokes standing or women standing in the middle of a ring, punching the absolute hell out of the other person, and it's dangerous.
Yeah,
It's extremely dangerous, and
if it's not managed correctly, it can be dangerous.
Yeah,
dangerous.
If it's not done correct,
Yeah.
it's dangerous.
And you can see that with some of the unlicensed stuff, like the ultra white collar stuff like that. They've had fatalities, because it's not managed properly. You talk about professional boxing and the difference between amateur boxing. Professional boxers have to go for brain scans. They have to go for they're proper under the microscope from the board to make sure that they are medically fit. They have to get eye tests, blood tests, brain scans. Everything has to be all done properly so that they 100% protecting their fighters before they get in their fight.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy about that difference in it, because in amateur it just kind of seems you're ready at a moment's notice. I mean, in amateur fighting, how long is the time frame between some fights? Are some fighters going in?
You can
3
box
weeks?
twice in one day.
Really?
You can box. You can't in the professional boxing unless the board sign it off, like they do some prize fighter bits and pieces. But they're a lot less rounds, so they risk assess it. That there's
Twice
a lot less
a day.
Yeah, you can box twice a day. My boy's done that. I've had amateur boxers that have done that. The two brothers that boxed me in London, they boxed twice in one day in the championships. You got to be ready for it. You got to be ready to box twice in one day, and they're grueling bouts. The two lads in London that boxed in London, they had tough fights. I mean, anywhere around London is going to be tough.
Yeah.
They're all tough kids around there. So you can end up boxing twice in one day, but it's less rounds. It's less rounds. It's not a professional boxing. You won't box 12 rounds and then try and box the next day and do another 12 rounds.
Yeah.
You can have a rest period in there. You know what I mean? Before you do that, you got to, because it's too much stress on the body.
Yeah, I mean, it must get to a point that when does someone step in and say stop? In a way, I mean, when
that's what we're there for. As a coaches, that's where your experience comes in, and your trainers, and you got to step in and say that's you're overtraining now. You got to step back a little bit. You got to take some rest. And some boys do. Some boys burn themselves out.
Yeah. Is there a point that you've had to do that you've had to say, you know what, you're not ready for this fight?
I didn't do it, and I regret it now. But my son, he boxed in Ireland.
Yeah.
He had 2 tough fights out there, and he came back, and I think it was a week or maybe 2 weeks, and he boxed a real good kid down there in Cheltenham. Not Cheltenham, Chelmsford, sorry. And that kid went on to do real good things, like box for GB, and he was absolutely knackered in that fight. But yeah, he was real tired. He probably should have never boxed. He just didn't look himself. He didn't look himself at all. He was totally and utterly flat. But he always turned up to have a fight. Everyone knew when they're fighting him, they're gonna have a proper bout. Like, he's a strong kid. And that day he just wasn't on it. And it was a shame. It was a shame.
Yeah. And so going back to the difference between or going from an amateur to a pro. Have you been in that situation? Have you had a fighter under yourself and have gone pro?
Yeah, I've got one now. He had a good amateur career with us. He went away from the sport for a while. He's come back now, and he's just going pro now. He's just literally got his license sorted out. He's got another medical on the 30th, which will be no problems at all, because he's already had after medical. The 75% of the medical's all good to go. And he's going to be out in March. So it's good.
First pro bout.
First bout, he'll be out in March. Yeah. So I'll be looking after him in March. Yeah, and I've had other fighters. Mohammed Sharif, he went over pro, but he didn't go over with me. He went over with others, which was a shame.
Is it hard to not take that personally? Is it hard?
It is, but at the time I wasn't interested in doing the prefer. And sometimes fighters go off and they make their own decisions. If he'd have come to me and said, "Look, can you take me over?" I may have done it. I may not have done it. I was busy at that point in my life, like working on the Reading project and stuff like that, on track. So I don't know whether I'd have done it or not. But I don't. Yeah. Now with the lad that's just gone over, he asked me. He said, "Will you go over with me?" I said, "Yeah." I said, we'll go over together. And there was another fighter there. He come to me as well and said, "Can you go over with me as well? Can you train me?" But unfortunately, he's pulled back from the sport at the moment. Yeah.
So when you've come through and you see the contract get put over to your pro fighter that's starting in March.
Yeah.
I mean, is that just like a euphoric feeling of like, oh my god, like we've done it? Is it like I take it that's quite a big deal for each fighter.
Yeah, it's a big deal not only for me and for the fight. It's a big deal for the club, like the new club that we're down, Scales Lane Boxing Club. Big shout out to all them boys down there. You've got a real great team down there. Dan Eden, he runs the gym. He's the gym owner. Put a lot of time and energy into setting up the whole boxing thing, because he's martial arts background, and he's got some real good coaches down there. And the club's developing. It's got a real good team of people there, and that's what I didn't have at Tommy's ABC. I didn't have a good team of people. I tried to do it all on my own. I took it personally if people tried to get involved rather than bringing people in, and that was the demise of the club. But Dan's opened it up. He's got a lot of people in there, a lot of different coaches doing different aspects. He's got me down there. He's got my son down there. He's got Stuart Holt. Got Simon down there. Some real good coaches with a lot of experience, a lot of different niche things as well. You've got good strength and conditioning coaches down there, dietitians. Yes, I think it's going to be a good gym.
I was going to say that there's so much to a boxer's body that there's so much kind of niches needed. There is the dietitian needed, and there is the someone that's going to okay, we're going to do this strength and conditioning. I had Louis Sims on the pod.
Good guy.
And he mentioned you. He mentioned some of the boxers that you've worked with together and things like that. And it's just like you don't realise how much goes into a person, but their bodies have to be like on point. Every single T is crossed, every single I is dotted, and if they're not like that. That can be the difference, can't it? That can be the difference between winning or losing.
If they're dehydrated, like I said earlier, that's going to be a massive on their performance. You know, over a 4-round fight, they might get through about 8 rounds, 12 rounds. That's going to come in and be a massive factor. And any niggly injuries, you know, it could be well at risk of when they go into the bout of them niggly injuries becoming something a lot serious. So you need to have all them factors in, like your dietitians, your strength and conditioning. It's all a massive part of boxing now. It wasn't like 30 years ago. When I first started coming into boxing, when I boxed 30 odd years ago, it was, you know, strength and conditioning was just grab some weights and just chuck them about. No one really knew what they're doing, but now there's a lot of science going into boxing. A lot of science.
Do you think boxing is kind of, is it changed as a sport, would you say?
Yeah, massively.
In a good or bad way?
Oh, definitely in a good way. Like safety wise, you know, we've got safeguarding now in the amateur boxing. We've got DBS checks, which were not about when I first started doing boxing. There's a lot more stringent with the rules in England boxing. The professional boxing, like I said earlier, there's brain scans now. There's blood tests. There's doping rules. You know, they test for everything to make sure that all the fighters are on an even playing field. Brain scans, blood tests, eye tests, because eyes is massive in boxing. That stops a lot of boxers' careers as well in the professional game. So I think that the safety side of it is, and obviously coaches' knowledge. Like coach 30 years ago and a coach now would have a lot more knowledge to what to look out for with fighters. You know, there's been some real high level brain injuries in boxing, like Joe McCullough, Michael Watson. Loads of people can see the signs now, you know. So you'd look out for them as a coach, and hopefully you'd pull your fighter straight out.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because obviously boxing at the end of the day, especially at a much higher pro level and things like that, it is an entertainment sport, isn't it? And it is just unfortunate that people think that why are they stopping a fight over a cut, and why are they doing this? But at the end of the day, it's that person's safety, and it's then also thinking about like going on to the future and things like that. And there's so much that people don't necessarily think about, and they think the safety is ruining the sport, but the safety is almost saving the sport in a way.
You got a young fighter and he's got a deep laceration over his eye. The doctor will stop that straight away, and so he should, because that's a career defining. That could be the end of the fighter's career.
Because once it goes,
it can
again
do,
and again,
if it's not treated properly, and you don't get the rest period on it, and if it's in a bad place, it could go all the time.
And so when you've been, I've taken you've cornered a boxing fight then, and you've been in,
loads. So
what's
thousands?
What's that like? What's that in? I mean, being in a corner, is your heart in your mouth the entire time? Is it?
Yeah, well, you invest a lot of time in these fighters, so that's the day that is the judgment day, isn't it? When you get into the corner, that's where it can go either way. So yeah, it's, doing the corner work is the main thing is the safety of the fighter, making sure that the fighters are good to go. You prep them for the bout. They go out there, make sure they're ready to rock and roll, and just look for the signs, make sure they're doing well. Give them the advice when they come back to the corner. Take the gum shield out, rinse them down, dry them off. Look for anything that might be a cut, but you can't see it. But you just look over them, and then just when they get into the corner, just let them take a couple of deep breaths and just start giving them some pockets of advice to how to beat the opponent that's in front of them. I mean, they're knackered when they come back to the corner. It's no good. You see some people shouting and screaming at them and ranting and raving and telling them to do a million things. I mean, I boxed myself. Half it just goes over your head.
Yeah, you're not going to remember it.
Nah, you're not going to remember it. And you're screaming and shouting from the corner. They don't hear you. Yeah. No one hears you. They're in the zone. Like when you box, everything's goes. It's just you and the opponent. It's just like a box. And everything just blacks out. It's just you are just looking at that guy. It's a science. He's throwing a shot. You're throwing a shot. You're blocking it. Whatever. Slipping to the side, trying to catch him. It's milliseconds. It's everything's done super fast paced. Your brain's working at a million miles an hour.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Amazing.
Screaming at them when their brain's in that moment. It's not gonna.
They can't hear you. They're in the zone. That they may hear one person. Most of my lads say, the only person I could hear was you. It's because they've listened to me all through the camp, like screaming and shouting, and when they've been sparring. But
I mean, how important is it that a coach goes out there and gives them the difference? I mean, it's like when so I used to kickbox growing up, and even I remember kind of like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm nowhere near a level of kind of what you're talking about. It's not like that, but I understand what it was like being in the ring and just kind of you don't really hear anything, and you've got I've got my coach shouting in the corner, literally screaming things at me, and I can't hear him out to the life of me. But you go back to the corner and they give you advice, and even if it's the one bit that goes in, sometimes that one bit that does go in does make a difference, and you start to think, right, okay, I'll do that now. I mean, I know this might come across a bit of a stupid thing to say, but obviously in a football match, say a team's losing, half time they come off, their coach probably gives them a bit of a grilling. They give them, right, okay, this is what we're gonna do, but they change tactics. Can a fighter do that? Can a fighter go halfway through a fight and then go, right, I'm going to do this now? And does the corner player, does the coach in the corner play a part?
Massively. You could have watched a video on a kid, and then it's not a video no more, showing me age, but you could watch something online about a kid, and then you go to the bout and they don't do that. They do something totally different. And you're like, well, we prepped for that. We prepped to do it this way. So your fighter needs to be savvy enough, and hopefully he's got enough experience to be able to switch on and change his tacts. So a good coach, some people would do different multiple scenarios with the fighter in the gym. So he's going to come out, this kid's looking for big shots or big right hands, and he's dropping his left hand, and you've been working on your right hand to counter punch him, and you just got to change it. But they might do something different when they come out, so you've got to be ready to change your tact, and that's the coach's job then, to be looking at that opponent and go, right, we need to do this, maybe we need to bend our knees or do something slightly different.
But it's also a complete different perspective, isn't it? So obviously the fighters just stood eye to eye, dead in front of him. You're looking at it from a much wider perspective, and you're seeing what he's doing with his feet that the potential fighter's missing and things like that. So I suppose also relaying that information on. You could be looking at your fighter, you'd be looking at the opponent, you've got to look at both of them. Most of the time you've got a second with you, and you'll sort out between you and the second who's doing what. For me, how I do it is I keep an eye on the opponent, and my second, I like him to keep an eye on our lad and make sure they're not doing anything stupid, like if they're dropping their hands or leaning in with their head or something like that. And that's how I set it up. I mean, sources of courses, everyone's got their own different way of doing it. Everyone's got their own way. Okay. So, and then when kind of setting up for, I mean, these fighters are going to be nervous, aren't they? They're going to be nervous before going out. How I take it you've got to be the person to kind of keep the confidence and
Yeah.
go, right, okay, no, there's no nerves here, and we're going to go out. How hard is it to do that? Because obviously this is your fighter. You've done the training.
Yeah.
You've put the effort in on for them and their behalf. But obviously it's only what they take out to the ring, isn't it? You could teach them how to do this 1,000 times, but they might go out to the ring and do something completely different.
Yeah, I've had it with fighters. They turn up and they do something totally random they've never done in the gym.
Yeah.
Like putting their head up over the top of their hands, or doing stuff you just think, why are you doing that? They've not done that in the gym, and that'd be nerves playing a part. You prep your fighter. You should prep your fighter to be 100% fit enough to get through them 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 8 rounds, 6 rounds, whatever. You prep them to be 100% ready for that. So in the pro game, you got a lot more time, in because obviously, you could be over 4 rounds, 6 rounds, 8 rounds, 12 rounds, whatever. So you got a lot more time to spend to work out how to crack that fighter that's in front of you. But you should know anyway before you turn up, to be fair.
Yeah.
But with the amateurs, you don't have a lot of time. You lose the first round, and then you have a tight second round, and then it's all in the third round. You've got to do a lot of work in the third round. You just don't know, do you? It's such a quick, ferocious bout. You can easy. That's what we say. Try and have a good first round. Always tell your fighter to have a good first round. Get out there, put the work on, win that first round, get that, and then try and make the other lad in the other corner panic in the second or third. So, but it doesn't always go that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's difficult, isn't it? Because obviously you're put in a position where you can't physically change it. You can't go and do it. Obviously, you're putting your faith into the training you've provided and the training they've gone over and kind of the weeks leading up to where they are. So I suppose you're putting your faith into them, that they actually absorb the knowledge, but also put the knowledge out there and use it in a ring, I suppose.
All you can really do is in the gym environment is put them into that bout environment as much as possible. Just try and get them into that place where they feel uncomfortable. Maybe take them to other gyms where they might be a little bit intimidated. Try and draw that into them so that they're used to that environment. Because when you've got people watching you, my boy boxed all the time. He used to box away on their shows down in Cornwall, Birmingham, wherever, all up and down the country, and he got so used to that environment that when we used to go to their home gyms, their home shows, it didn't bother him. It didn't bother that they'd be booing him and rubbish and all that, and whenever the lad lands a punch, everyone goes whoa, and then he'd land a punch and no one will say anything. But that's just, you just get used to that environment. You just get so comfortable with experience that it just falls off your shoulder. It means nothing.
One thing that I didn't necessarily realise about kind of boxing and the crowd and things like that, and especially between coaches and fighters, just how respectful it is. I mean, you've got two people having a scrap, and you're just kind of thinking, well, they're going to have bad blood, they're going to hate each other and things like that. But it's not. It's almost like the utmost respect, isn't it? I mean, you put them in a ring, and obviously they're trying to take your head off.
Yeah,
but you get them outside the ring, you get them chatting. They're the friendliest people ever. They're all they're just as friendly as they can be to each other, aren't they?
Definitely. I mean, I don't think I've had any fighters that have been like that, where they've been disrespectful to anyone. After a bout, they've always shown respect to the opponent, and if they didn't, I'd throw them out the gym, to be fair. Because you should respect them. You should respect that opponent. They've got in the ring, they've got under the ropes. It takes a lot. That's what a lot of people don't realise. They stand outside, they have a couple of beers. They think it's dead easy to do that, but it's not. It's not easy to get under them ropes. It takes a lot of doing. You've got to respect any fighter for doing that.
No, of course, and I think they also realise what each fighter has gone through, because they've been through it themselves, haven't they? So and I think they can take their hat off to each other and go, you know what, I know what it's like. It's not easy. It's
tough.
It is tough, isn't it?
Yeah, it is tough.
Kind of going back to the obviously the pro and amateur side of things. So everyone knows about the Tysons and the Mayweathers and things like that are earning ridiculous amounts of millions per fight. I mean, what's the money side of it as an amateur? I mean, is there any money in it? Like, are they paying to fight, or are they getting paid to fight?
No, the only people in the amateur world in England boxing that actually get any salary from it is GB boxers, so
Right.
they'll get a salary from it, or they'll be sponsored because they're the top
Is
flight.
that a GB Olympic?
Yeah, GB
Right.
Olympic teams, they'll be sponsored, or they'll be looked after, be paid. Obviously, the armed services, they're paid fighters because they're in the armed services. So you'll find a lot of elite boxers will go over to the military, and if they make it in the military teams, they could be paid fighters. I had a fighter that come to me from Arborfield. He boxed in the novices. He got to the final and got beat in the final by a northern lad, but he got picked up by the army team, so he's absolutely ecstatic. So he was in his usual regiment, and then he got picked up by the army team and ended up boxing for the army, so he was a paid fighter. So he didn't have to go to Afghan. He was a paid fighter, so he was absolutely over the moon.
Yeah.
Decent fighter as well. Real good.
So in amateur, there's not a lot of money in it.
Nah, there's no money. You can get sponsorship deals. Maybe some people will sponsor you, and maybe you'd be lucky enough to put a logo on your shorts. Nothing too flash, because England Boxing won't have it, but a small logo on the shorts they might go towards your training kit, stuff like that. Get a little bit of money, but there's no money in England Boxing. The idea of England Boxing is to gain that knowledge, get that experience, to then hopefully go on and make a professional career out of it. Not all fighters want to go professional. Some fighters want to stay in the amateurs and just get to the highest they can in the amateurs. Like my son was not interested in going pro. He stayed in the amateurs and got to, he enjoyed all the bouts he had in there, like the tough fights he had there.
Yeah. And so when you do go pro, obviously, is it then the money starts coming? But obviously you've already mentioned about it's
not always.
Not always.
I mean, there's been some great fighters come out of Reading that you would have thought would have gone on and had real good professional careers, and they didn't, because for whatever reason, maybe they couldn't sell tickets, or and there've been some great fighters, like the ABA champions, that have come out of Reading, and you think they're going to do really well as a pro, and they just ain't done it. Done it. And then you've had other fighters that have done really well as a pro, but they could sell a lot of tickets, and they've gone maybe further than what you thought they would go, because they can sell a lot of tickets. So the promoter's dream.
Yeah. Oh no. Well, and when it comes into a coach and things like that, I mean, how closely are you? So you say you work down at the gym at the moment.
Yeah.
Have you got a particular, let's say, net of fighters that are currently underneath you, or do you do you float around the gym and work with anyone that's there, or is there do you have a particular group of fighters that you're working with regularly?
So I try and work with all the fighters in the gym, but obviously if you've got boys that are fighting, that are competitive, professionals and England Boxing, you've got to try and obviously push your time into them guys, because they're the ones that are competitively fighting. But I then invest in my coaches as well, because I'm the head coach at Scouters Lane Boxing Club.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I invest in the coaches. So I do work with the coaches, get them to a standard where they're comfortable to be coaching the lads that are trying to work up to be carded, or the raw lads that are coming in the gym. So they'll work with them, but I will try and work with them guys as well, because that they're all future potential fighters for the gym. So you got to invest in everyone that comes in the gym. You can't just go, give all them to such and such because they're never going to box. That's not the way, because you got to invest in everyone that's in the gym. And I've always done that with Tommy's. I used to train, coach everyone with other coaches in there, because and then you bring on the fighters, and then at some point hopefully you can get them carded, get them registered, and then get them fighting.
Yeah. And so you kind of work with, you're the head coach, so working with other coaches below, where do they come in with your fighters? Obviously they've each got their own niches, as you said, but where do they kind of come in? Are you kind of almost referring? Are you in a way of like, right, okay, this fighter needs to really work on this, go work with that coach, he's going to be better with it than I? Or how does it go?
It's kind of like all coaches to work with all fighters, really, because everyone's got a different way of doing things, and some coaches will naturally progress to certain lads that they work better with. Yeah. So I kind of leave it for them to sort themselves out. I'll set the gym up when I get in there, so right, you go and take them ones, I'll take these ones, you do this, you do that. So we're lucky, like I say, it's down at Scowers, there's 3 or 4 coaches in there, which is unheard of in some gyms. Like
Yeah.
some gyms have just got 1 or 2 coaches, but we've got 3 or 4 coaches in there. This is just unheard of, and they're all passionate about boxing. You know, they don't just turn up because their son's there boxing. They turn up there because they're passionate about boxing. Because you get a lot of parents that naturally progress over to being coaches because their kids are there, but then that's how Ad and Tom is. But in this gym, these are just people that are passionate about boxing. They don't have to be there. They're not paid. They're there as volunteers. You know, they just love training fighters, and you know, they just love the experience that they're getting from training the fighters.
Yeah,
and not just the fighters, everyone in the gym, because it's not just about the fighters. You're gonna sometimes you're gonna have people in the gym that are never gonna fight, but they just love boxing. They love being there and participating in it.
Yeah, of course. So when you've got say a new fighter comes in, a brand new fighter comes off the street into the gym, and goes, right, I want to start training. What does a day like look like for potentially an amateur coming in? They're trying to get some belts under their belt. Yeah. What does that kind of look like for them?
Well, first of all, they may not be fighters. They may just be participants in the gym that would just like training. You know, and you know, you kind of call them like keep fitters. Potentially, they're just there. They just want to be fit. So a day in life would be, you're going to get them. You're going to warm them up. Spend maybe 5-10 minutes warming them up, make sure the body's prepared, ready to train, because ask them if you've got any injuries. So is there anything I need to know about before you start putting them through a grueling training session. Get them on a skipping rope. Most people don't know how to skip when they walk in the gym. Some people do. Good way of warming up, statically warming up, skipping on the spot, maybe do some dynamic skipping, get them moving about, and then get them in the mirror or get them to shadow boxing. Start working on the foundations, the footwork. The key thing about boxing is the footwork. If you get that right from the get-go, everything else seems to slot in behind it.
Follow.
People just want to get to the hands straight away, but it's not. It's all about that stance, all about your footwork, how you can move across the floor, moving from left to right, forward, backwards is the key. And so we'd spend a lot of time with a brand new fighter doing footwork, and then you'd get into the punching aspect and the moving while you're throwing the punches, and then into the defense. But that's not, that wouldn't come in your first session. That may take a couple of weeks before you get to sort of defending punches, moving around. And then after a few weeks, maybe months, depending how quickly the person picks up the boxing, you may do some light technical sparring once they've been registered with England Boxing. You may do some light technical sparring with them.
Yeah, I mean it's so different in it, because it's not all about who can throw a right hand the hardest, is it? It's so technical.
Yeah, so technical.
And the level between some of these fighters is just unreal, and how one, quick they pick it up, but two, how they just hold themselves and they can just carry themselves through fights and things like that.
I took a few of my coaches recently to England boxing shows, and they've seen the standard of boxing at some of these shows, and they're like, it's just phenomenal. Like how quick they are to react, how sharp they are with the punches, how well they move around the ring, how they defend punches. So it is an eye how good the quality of fighters are that are out there. Some, obviously, there's some quality that's not out there, but there's a lot of real decent fighters out there.
Would you say it's common for a fighter that could make it extremely well in pro level never actually make it pro and only ever stay in the amateur, or do you think they're found before they kind of miss the opportunity?
I think back when I was boxing, there was a lot of fighters that just stayed in the amateurs, and not a lot of people wanted. They didn't want to go
choice, or
just probably just because they're just happy just boxing in the amateurs, and maybe an area champion in the amateurs, the Eastern Counties champion or something like that. Georgie Smith, he stayed amateur throughout his own career. Probably could have been a real good pro, but he stayed amateur, and there was a time going back a few years that you didn't even have to do any amateur boxing. You could go straight pro, but that doesn't happen now. You have to have amateur experience. So anyone out there that thinks they can just automatically go pro, you can't. Even unlicensed boxing, that's not recognised by the British Board of Boxing Control. You have to have amateur experience, and you have to be able to prove you've had an amateur experience.
Yeah. Okay. So and having that amateur experience, I take it you've had people come into the gym and you've gone, no, like this this sport maybe ain't for you.
Yeah, I've had people come in and go, I'm going to be a professional, I'm going to be a world champion, and you don't want to pop their bubble, but you're like, you're probably not going to be, mate. You're just not going to be. That's not. I was remembering my first gym, someone bounced in the gym going, I'm going to be like Anthony Joshua. I was like, he's a 1 in a million. He's a 1 in a million fighter. And he boxed one of my lads, Anthony Joshua.
Yeah. So do you? I mean, Anthony Joshua fights in heavyweight, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So do you coach fighters from all different weight classes, or is there a weight class that you specialise in?
No, any weight class, class, any age. Obviously for England boxing, any age, any weight class. Boys, girls, whatever. We box everyone. We train everyone. We got a couple of good girls down the gym as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's good. And I think in that case that is another one of the examples of how boxing has adapted to be a much better sport.
When I first got in it 25 years ago, they didn't even recognise women boxing. I had a real good girl in the gym, and they didn't even recognise women boxing. And trying to get sparring for her was so hard because just no one just was not interested in women's boxing. But now it's massive. It's huge. Women's boxing. It's really good to see in the sport.
And I kind of want to touch on the weight classes and how different is it when you've got when you're working with a heavyweight and then you're working potentially with a featherweight or a lightweight fighter. I mean, how different is the approach to their training?
Oh, it's a lot different. Yeah, it's a lot different. The lighter weights, it's all about work rate. The heavier weights, obviously, more about power and keeping your feet in contact with the floor. The lighter weights will be all about work rate. They'll still be powerful. There's still some real powerful featherweights, flyweights out there. But you set it up totally different. Obviously, with the heavyweights, they don't need to worry about weight either. They can be any weight over 91 kilos. So
I mean, 91 kilo is heavy, isn't it? So when you're looking at fighters that are sitting quite comfortably at the 97,
easy 100 kilos. Most heavyweights are 105 kilos.
I mean, that's crazy to be moving that weight around the gym, especially at some of the speeds that they do it. It's so impressive to watch, isn't it?
I took Michael Sprott on the pads with the gloves that he boxed Anthony Joshua with, and I tell you what, he was unbelievably powerful. Yeah, he nearly took my shoulders out of the joints. It's just 10-ounce gloves. You're just thinking, wow, you wouldn't want to be on the end of them punches. It's so hard, so fast as well. Yeah, Michael Sprott. Big shout out to you, mate, if you're listening.
And I kind of want to touch on the kind of Olympic side as well, like the GB side. Have you taken a fighter down that route? Have you worked on that?
No, I've not had the luxury of being involved in it. And I mean, the GB coaches are. There's not many GB coaches around. I do know Dave Alloway. He done the training course for me, and he's a GB coach. But they're the top flight coaches. You know, you usually if you've got a boy that's at that level, they'll then go and train with England, and then if they box for England and they box at a good standard for England, they'll then go on and box for GB. So you sort of relinquish, because I'm not a level 3 coach, I'm a level 2 or level 4. You relinquish the boys on to them coaches. Okay. They work up in England like Sheffield.
So it's not like a skill level. It's an actual qualification level.
Yeah, they put a lot of work in to get to the level coach where they are. They would have done a lot of assessments. I mean, level 1, level 2s, we get assessed. We get assessed on our coaching skills. But these would have gone through some. They'd have been up Sheffield. They'd have been under real close scrutiny to make sure they're at the standard where they need to be coaching them boys at that level.
And obviously, talking about the very, very top. Obviously, Anthony Joshua came from the Olympic route, didn't he? Obviously, he went and won. Yeah. He went and won gold, wasn't it? And then and then went on down the pro route, didn't he?
He pretty much went first season or second season. He went on. He won the novices. He won the intermediates. He then won the ABAs. Like every year, he won something. Yeah. And then he went on and boxed for GB and won the Olympics. All the timing was perfect for him. He boxed in London in the 2012 Olympics, and then obviously was signed by a professional promoter, Eddie Earn, took him on. So that's the perfect path for a boxer. It's just made for him. He's just that's, if you could write it, that's how you'd want to do it.
And so what's the difference between kind of the Olympic route of boxing and then the pro? What would you say like the difference is within the boxing? Is there a difference?
It's not a lot. I don't think there's a lot of difference between it, because some of them Olympic fighters, they box 6 rounds. Some of them box 6 rounds. They do championships where they do 6 rounds. They wear hand wraps like the pros.
Yeah.
They wear 10-ounce gloves as well. So there's not a massive amount of difference. And some of the coaches that were training the GB were professional coaches. Robert McCracken was a professional coach. Had a lot of professional fighters, Carl Froch, people like that. So there's not a lot of difference between it. But they are still amateur. They're not. But you can cross, even as a professional, you can cross over as an amateur to the professional game and then cross back. So you could have I think it's up to 6 professional bouts, and if you don't fancy it, you can drop back into the amateur boxing world. And in Europe, of course, you can box amateur and pro. It's mad. Like you could, in theory, be an amateur but boxing a pro in Europe.
Yes, wow.
Yeah, so that's. I mean, they don't allow that over here. You can only do a certain amount of professional bouts, and then you got to make a decision whether you're going to stay pro or you're going to go back to the amateurs.
So what I mean, breaking into Europe, is that kind of stepping up from English boxing?
Definitely. When you start boxing in Europe, my lad boxed in Sweden and he boxed in Ireland. So when you start boxing out there, you start meeting some real good quality fighters.
And obviously you've mentioned your son being a fighter quite a few times, and obviously you've been coaching him. What's that like, leaving stuff at the gym in a way? Because obviously you also see him, like, say, I don't know, there's been a bad day at the gym, and is that hard to walk away from and go and sit at a family dinner table and have dinner? Yeah,
I just think we had the relationship of when he was in the gym, I was a coach, and when we was at home, I was his dad. We had that relationship, and he's such a chilled out lad. You'd look at him and think, apart from his nose being slightly bent. I don't even like me saying that, but he's just so chilled out. It's just he just doesn't look like he's got a bad bone in him, and then he steps under the ropes, and then he just turns into a different person.
You don't want to stand opposite.
He's just an absolute animal. But he's just I was his dad at home, and then I was his coach. I was his coach in the gym, and what I said went, and that's pretty much how it is with all boxers.
Okay, and sort of you've been a coach for a while. I mean, what are your plans with it? Do you have any plans? Obviously, you've now got your pro boxer coming up, and and he's fighting in, you said, March.
Yeah, he's fighting in March. He was due to fight in February, but that's been postponed because of this medical issue. But there's no issues with the medical thing. He's definitely going to be fighting in March.
Does he know who he's fighting?
No, that'd be down to his manager and the promoter to sort that out. That he'll be boxing for definite in March, without a doubt, because he wants to get out. He wants to get moving.
So March is, I mean, it's within
6 weeks away,
isn't it, really?
Yeah,
so
5-6 weeks away.
What does that look like at the moment for him?
He's ticking over at the moment because he hasn't got a definitive date of when he's actually boxing. He will be boxing in March, so and then we'll start ramping up again. He was ramping up because it's just quite a long, drawn out affair trying to get a professional boxing license, because obviously the medical side of it is so stringent. So that's taking a bit of time for him to get to where he needs to get. But we'll start ramping training up in the next 6 weeks. Yeah.
Okay, and I mean, you're coming in. You're obviously going to start ramping it up. Has he got a team behind him at the moment? Obviously, he's got yourself.
Yeah, he's got me. Yeah, he's got a few people behind him. He's got all the lads down the gym and that behind him. We'll be taking him out sparring different places, working with other professional fighters. Obviously, all licensed up, so he'll be sparring with them guys. Just start exposing him a little bit more, picking that up, and then just get on top of his weight management. Yeah, he does. He does all his own running and all that stuff. He does all that outside of the gym. I don't need to track him for that. All I need to do is just track his weight and just write his training plans out for when he turns up at the gym. So I'll be getting all them written out, and then we'll be working to the training regimes as he comes in.
Did you say this was your first time working at a pro level?
I've had a few others that I've dipped in and out with.
Yeah.
So but because I was an England boxing coach, I couldn't fully train them because I didn't have the license at the time. But now I've got my license, so I can fully train them. But when we was at Bournemouth, there was a few professional fighters in there, and when I had Tommy's, like I said, a couple of my fighters went over pro when I was at Tommy's, so I worked with them guys.
You were nervous to work at?
No, definitely not. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it. It's the next progression, really, for me. I'm 50, nearly 51 now. I'll be 51 in July, so something.
Like, I don't. Obviously, this might sound a bit like cliche and everything, but the way you're moving in the gym, there is no way I'd have taken you to 51. So
I still train hard. You see me training. I still train super hard.
It's ridiculous how Tommy trains in the gym, and it's just stuff that you wouldn't want to try yourself, is it? But
that's it. Well, I boxed a year ago, so I didn't enjoyed that. So it's just decent.
Is there part of you that wants to get back in?
I'd love to go back in again, but it's this time. You need to be dedicated. Even like at the level I was messing about. You still need to be ready, because you could easily get hurt in the boxing ring. So you need to be fit. I'm always pretty fit, but I'd like you can always. There's always room to be a little bit fitter, without a doubt.
Of course, and when it comes to boxing, it does really matter, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's not really something that you can kind of pull out one day. It's all the work that you've put in beforehand, isn't it?
And you go back to talking about ultra white collar and things like that, and just 6 weeks and then jumping in a boxing ring. Not for me. I wouldn't get involved in anything like that. That's just crazy to think that they chuck people in a boxing ring after 6 weeks.
Yeah,
it's got injury written all over it. For me.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Well, obviously you said about your pro fighter coming up in March, and you got to let me know about that. And I'll definitely keep an eye out.
Definitely, and it'd be boxing around London somewhere, Arrow or somewhere like that. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for him. So he's going to be a good little fighter. Good fighter.
All right. Well, if you were tell the viewers watching whereabouts are you working at the moment? What are you doing? What are you looking at and things like that?
Yeah, we're down at Scowers Lane Boxing Club, so down near the atrium there. So we're down there. Obviously got all different aspects of martial arts going on there, but obviously I only look after the boxing Mondays and Wednesdays. There's some other boxing classes that go on down there, so it's horses for courses, but I only look after England boxing and the pros. I don't do nothing else. So and I do a little bit of personal training, so if anyone wants to hook me up and they want to learn the art of boxing, I'm quite happy for people to hook me up and just take them through. I'm there. Take them through years of experience. So.
No, that's good. Well, well, thank you very much for coming on. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and it's been quite an insight into the amateur and professional boxing game. And I don't think many people kind of, unless you're into the boxing, and you're kind of you have trained in it a little bit and you speak to the right people and things like that. I think people have a complete different misconception of it all.
It's a tough game. It's a real tough game. It's not something you can take on lightly. I think probably 1% of boys and girls that walk in the gym will actually put the gloves on and compete. That's the sort of ratio. And then think about the amount of people that are going to go on pro off the back of that. It's even less and less and less. So it's a tough sport. But if you dedicate yourself, you can become a fighter without a doubt. If you put the time in, listen and learn to your coaches, you can become a England boxer, definitely. No,
perfect. Well, like I said, thank you very much for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
I think it's been a really good insight into boxing, and I really hope the viewers watching have enjoyed and you've got something out of it as well, because it's unreal when you kind of look at it from the outside point of view, and then when you actually learn about the inside, it's just completely different to kind of what it is. And what you kind of think it is. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in future episodes. Thank you.
Cheers.